Here we are once again, everybody, having sent the Krakoan Era of X-Men comics to its well-deserved watery grave. We are here with a relaunch. A new era of X-Men starts with X-Men #1. And one would hope that with the positive fan reaction and success of X-Men 97, that maybe Marvel would take this opportunity to return to a more familiar era of the X-Men, kind of a soft reboot, if you will, putting us back to somewhat of a status quo to where we can relaunch to new stories of, the more familiar themes that we've come to know and love from the eras of X-Men's of time gone by. And I was really optimistic going into X-Men #1. I was really hoping that they would take the momentum that the X-Men had gained and having shed this toxic old behemoth of a story arc behind it, that going forward would just be a breath of fresh air, shed new light on old friends. And does this book do that? Does this book give us the launching point that we wanted? No, it does not. No, this book is terrible. This is an awful, rancid comic book. I'm going to review it. I'm going to react to it. I'm going to be spoiling it. So if you haven't read it and for whatever reason you want to read this horrible thing, then by all means, read the comic, come back. You can see my review, my reaction. But without further ado, let's get into this monstrosity. So this book opens up in Alaska, where the X-Men are living in a fortress. And the sheriff of this tiny Alaskan town that the X-Men are now looming over has come to kind of visit him. He's joined by Hank McCoy, or greeted at the door by Hank McCoy, and he informs him that Cyclops and the rest of the team had to go out in the field to deal with something. So I'm kind of thinking, all right, exciting. We're going to get some X-Men actions, have them fighting some villains. And they show up in this weird rig. I guess it's the Marauders ship. I don't know. It looks silly. It looks like something out of a crazy space pirate anime. Anyway, the X-Men come right along in this thing, and they engage their villain. Oh my God, it's freaking Orcus again. Why won't it die? Why won't the Krakoan Era die? So yes, the X-Men are fighting seemingly the only villain they have, which is Orcus, who has now shown up doing whatever the hell it is they're doing. The X-Men have found him. They've captured Wolverine, and they think Cerebro, I don't know who's operating it, but has found 3 mutant signatures in this Orcus base. So here they are. They're going to deal with Orcus, and here we go. Meanwhile, the B plot is Beast is escorting this sheriff of this Alaskan town around their fortress base, and it turns out this, I guess, is a former Sentinel factory that used to be part of this town. And so really the B plot is Beast just kind of leering at this sheriff out of side-eyed and kind of giving her these weird passive-aggressive grins, while at the same time just telling her things like, oh, well, we had a paradise once and you humans took it from us, so blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it's not the happy Beast that we're used to. And again, why can't they shed the Krakoan Era? It's gone. It should never be spoken of again, yet it looms on every page, in almost every bubble of dialogue of this god-awful book. This is not a reset at all. The Krakoan Era is alive as well. They're just not on Krakoa anymore. The themes are here. The characters are the same dark tones and everything else. It's all still here. This is no reboot. So go back to the X-Men. They're fighting the Orcus minions. A Sentinel shows up. They deal with the Sentinel. It's all the stuff we've seen through the Krakoan Era 2,000 times at this point. And by the way, just side note, if you look at this middle panel, I can't stand the Juggernaut on this X-Men team. The Juggernaut's a villain. I don't accept him as a hero. I don't give two craps about the character arc he went on in the Krakoan Era. The X-Men is the Juggernaut is one of the X-Men's greatest villains. Put him back. Stop doing this. Stop doing this, Jed MacKay, writer of this comic book. So the X-Men deal with this, and it turns out the 3 mutant life signatures they found were actually weird Orcus adults who somehow have mutant powers now. So you have mutant-powered Orcus soldiers that somehow manifest more mutant powers well into their 30s. That's something the X-Men don't really understand how that happened. But it did, and so they defeat the Orcus people, or the Orcus people escape, or whatever. The fight just kind of goes on for pages, and the X-Men return. They rescued Wolverine, but he quits because he says, you know what, I can't do this again. After Krakoa, I'm just done, and he leaves the X-Men. And Magneto shows up and passively threatens the sheriff, And another, again, odd, and I guess the Magneto is kind of the pseudo leader of this team. They call him Professor M, and he just floats around in a chair. Because if you remember, from the end of Krakoan Era, Professor Xavier goes to prison because they basically turned him into some weird kind of psychic megalomaniac. And Beast tells Cyclops, well, if you want, we can start disassembling the Sentinel parts and getting this factory into some kind of functional base for us. And Cyclops says, no, we're going to go ahead and leave this big monster Sentinel statue monstrosity looming over this Alaskan town that we've decided to call home to remind everybody of what they took us and what they took from us and what they owe to us now. And it's like, what the hell ever, Scott Summers? This Alaskan town doesn't owe you anything. There was this weird little sub-conversation between the sheriff and Beast about how this Sentinel factory was actually providing a lot of jobs for this town. And you know what? Bravo, Sentinels, I guess, to help solve the unemployment problem. I don't know. What the hell am I supposed to make with that? People got to work. I'm sorry. So who are the enemies here? This rings very much like that X-Men Green comic from a couple of years ago, where that psychotic nature girl X-Men character goes and starts murdering grocery store clerks because they give out plastic bags with purchases. And she's supposed to be the hero of that book, just like the X-Men, who are now terrorizing an Alaskan town, are supposed to be the heroes in this book. And you know what? I'm just tired of this. This whole approach to the X-Men is just garbage and trash. This book was garbage and trash. If I had to sum up this comic in one word, it's just dreck. I don't know what else to call it. Jed MacKay did a piss poor job writing it. He clearly doesn't have the understanding of the characters. I like Ryan Stegman's artwork. I really do. He's one of my favorite artists, and the art in this book is very nice, but I don't know. I just don't feel like Ryan Stegman's art fits the X-Men, if that makes any sense. He was doing Venom, and I loved it. I loved his work on Venom. I love his work on Spider-Man, but I don't know, in this big team setting, I don't know. The art didn't click to me, as in it didn't fit the story, it didn't fit the characters. But that could just be personal preference. Again, I like Stegman. Jed MacKay, I've liked his stuff before. This is just bad. This is bad writing. This is not your title, Jed MacKay. So if I had to try to summarize the problem with the X-Men right now, because I did, I actually, after I read this comic, I sat and thought for about 2 hours about it. Like, why do I hate this so much? What are they doing so wrong? What don't they understand? And then I think it comes to one simple phrase that I don't think the Marvel writers and editorial staff can get out of their head. And that phrase is Magneto was right. So that was a theme in the X-Men 97, but they did it better because Magneto can be right, but he can still be evil. I don't understand why they don't get this through their heads. Magneto is an isolationist. He believes in peace through force. He's not a good guy. He's not a good character. And even though they try to reform him into a good character, it just doesn't work. Now, when they did it in the X-Men 97 series, they kind of approached it as he was still Magneto, but he was trying to do something different. He was trying to walk another path. He's not doing that here. He's still Magneto. He still believes what he believes. He still has the same methods and approach to things as he always had. It's just now he has the X-Men backing him. And now the X-Men are just basically these horrible people that for some reason have taken themselves into this Alaskan wilderness and are kind of trying to rule it like lords, or they're trying to just impose themselves on it. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a very odd tone to me. And what I think they've done by flipping this whole dichotomy of the Professor Xavier and Magneto, the X-Men have lost their heart and soul. That's what it was. The ideals of Professor X and the ideals of Magneto are the core of the book. Xavier is a futurist. Magneto he's a terrorist. There's really no other way to explain him. You can relate to him, you can understand his motivations, but you need to understand his methods are still wrong. Xavier knew that about him. That's why he always tries to reach out to Magnus. That's the whole core of the relationship. The idea that these two people can disagree on such a fundamental level about such an important thing, but then at the end of the day, still meet in the middle of a park and play a game of chess. That's something I think that is just kind of lost on the writers of this book. Like, for example, I think if they probably had a political disagreement with somebody, I doubt they could hook up and go get a cup of coffee together. That's just not the kind of people they are. And it comes across in this book, and it comes across in this writing. The book is just terrible. It's just, I can't say enough negative things about it. I mean, if you want to do the whole Magneto is right, see things from his point of view, it's not like the man's never lacked for followers. He's always been able to gather his own people to carry out his vision of how mutant-human relations should go. Just do a book based on that. You don't have to bring the X-Men into it. He's got his own followers. He's got a lot of people who think like he does, who thinks that he's right, and they're characters that people really like and even relate to. Like a Mystique. She just had a whole wedding thing, for God's sake. The Avengers came, even though she's a terrorist and mass murderer. Thought that was hilarious. But yeah, write that book. Don't write a Magneto book and put the X-Men in it. That just doesn't make any sense. That's not the characters. That's not who they are. That's not who they've ever been. And it's gotten tired. It's gotten old. I'm getting sick of reviewing it. I'm getting sick of reading it. So this whole idea that I'm just going to pick up an X-Men book and I'm going to root for them because their name is on the title, even though they're just clearly the antagonists, I don't know. I can't follow this anymore. I really can't. I mean, when you if you want to take a villain and make him a hero, that's one thing. Taking a villain and taking heroes and making them villains, they don't get their own comic book anymore. They're villains. The X-Men are Avengers villains now. That's all they are. That's what they were during Krakoa. I was hoping that they would reform them, bring them back to the characters we knew they were, and just get us back to the X-Men that we know and love. But no, they didn't do that. They decided to keep the Krakoa era going in spirit, if not in name, and that's what this book is. It's not a restart. It's not a reboot. It's not a refresh. It's none of it. The Krakoan era is still alive and well in X-Men, and this book is just dragged to the watery depths along with Krakoa because they can't let it go. They just can't let it go. And that's really it. I might check out the other X-Men reboots. I don't know. This one was so bad. I mean, I was cautiously optimistic, but deep down, I thought this book would be bad. It's much worse than I thought. So, yeah, that's it. That's my review. I'll try one or two more of these X titles, but then I'm just going to wipe my hands of it until 4 or 5 years down the road when they decide to reboot these characters again, and maybe they'll get it right. I don't know. In the meantime, tell me what you think. Did you like the Krakoan era? Are you happy to see it go? Did you read the new X-Men book? What'd you think of it? Tell me in the comments below while you're down there. Tell me who your favorite X-Men is, and maybe I don't know, your favorite era of X-Men, your favorite kind of maybe issue number, title, whatever, however you want to describe it. We'll talk about it in the comments below while you're down there. Do all the usual things like subscribe, and I will talk to you on the next one. Oh man, this has been a long review, and I have been gone from this game for a while. Hope to get more out soon. I'll talk to you then. Bye.